What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and today I want to talk about Resident Evil Requiem, the newest, biggest game in the Resident Evil series that came out a few weeks ago on basically every console, including the Nintendo Switch 2. I personally played the PS5 version because I just wanted that deep immersion of 4K graphics and all of that, but I heard the Switch 2 version was really good as well, which is pretty exciting. But that's not the point of today's video. The point of today's video is to talk about Resident Evil Requiem, and I was sort of going back and forth about whether or not I wanted to do a scripted review for this game, but I decided I would just go off the dome to talk about it because I think I have a unique perspective both in my Resident Evil fandom and in my fandom of Requiem, because I do think it is an incredible game, one of the best in the series. And to tell you why, I have to start with a story, because my first Resident Evil game was not Resident Evil 1, it was not Resident Evil 4, it was not even Resident Evil 2 or 7 or something. These are the common entry points for the series. My first Resident Evil game was Resident Evil Revelations 2. Not even the first Revelations, the second one, which, by the way, is a terrible introduction to the series. Claire and Barry and Chris were meaningless names to me at the time, but when I was scrolling the eShop as a youngin', after I got a Nintendo eShop gift card for my birthday, I saw one game on sale, and that was Resident Evil Revelations 2. I looked over to my friend who gifted me the gift card, and I said, should I get Resident Evil Revelations 2? I mean, I had heard great things about the Resident Evil series. It is one of the most iconic in gaming, and, you know, for a 13-year-old like me, the allure of playing something as grotesque and violent as Resident Evil was quite an appeal. And my friend said, yes, you have to get that game right now. You better buy that thing and download it stat, because he also had heard great things about Resident Evil. We were both Nintendo gamers who, up until this point, didn't really have a chance to play any Resident Evil games. We didn't know that Resident Evil 4 was on the Wii. We didn't care about Revelations 1 on the Wii U, but these Resident Evil games were marketed to us. The Switch to me felt like the first console in a while where Capcom was proud to put Resident Evil on it. Maybe not since the GameCube, and that's sort of a casual opinion because I was like 2 years old when the Wii came out, but the point is we knew the allure of Resident Evil, and when we saw it available on the eShop, we had to cop it. So my introduction to Resident Evil was a game made for hardcore Resident Evil fans, and a game not even made by the main Resident Evil team. This was outsourced to a different studio. So about the most impure Resident Evil introduction you could get is Resident Evil Revelations 2, and yet I loved it. I love Resident Evil Revelations 2. It's a great game. It is fun, it's silly, it's zany, it's got a cool true ending if you do the right thing in the campaign, and I liked it so much as a kid that I ended up going back and trying out Resident Evil Revelations 1, and then when I got an Xbox in 2019, I tried out all of the newer Resident Evil games, like 7 and 2 Remake, which came out that same year, and needless to say, I was hooked. Resident Evil now is one of my favorite gaming franchises of all time, and it all started with Resident Evil Revelations 2. So why do I bring up this random story to talk about RE9? Well, because I think when people are talking about Resident Evil Requiem, they're comparing it to a game like Resident Evil 7, which is totally fair. The grace sections are very similar to RE7 in terms of stealth and horror and resource management. And then they're also comparing it to some of the modern remakes like RE2, 3, and 4, which are very similar to Leon's sections. But I think the most accurate comparison for Requiem is actually the Revelation series. To me, this almost feels like the long-rumored and the long-desired by me Resident Evil Revelations 3, that reportedly was in development and then got scrapped because it was that bad. Capcom saw it, they said, there's no way we can release this. But I mean, think about the structure of Resident Evil Requiem. You play as two main characters, one of which is an icon of Resident Evil, and the other of which is a newcomer but is related to a past Resident Evil character. You constantly switch between more survival horror focused scary gameplay and more action based gameplay. And the game even asks you to explore certain areas multiple times with different characters, which is something that Revelations, especially 2, loves doing. And I think a lot of the criticism levied towards Resident Evil Requiem is the fact that there is this duality in the gameplay, that at one moment you're playing as Grace and it's very Resident Evil 7 coded, and in another moment you're playing as Leon and it's very similar to RE4 Remake. But as a fan of the Revelations series, I feel right at home with that style of gameplay, with that structure of gameplay. Because not only is it really fun, like both of these types of gameplay are very fleshed out, very satisfying, very fun to perform, but also it allows for a lot of zany scenarios and opportunities in the gameplay that wouldn't have been available otherwise. I mean, Leon drives off of a building on a motorcycle into the air and lands on another building at one point in this game. And that is weird, it is unrealistic, it is kooky, it is campy. But first of all, that is why Resident Evil is so good, is because it's aware of how ridiculous it is. And I think people ask of the Revelation series a lot, why does any of this happen? Why are you constantly running out of exploding buildings, before the timer runs out? Why are you playing as Claire Redfield, sitting in a chopper, holding an RPG, and trying to kill a monster as big as a mountain? And I think the answer is simply because it is a blast. Resident Evil jumped the shark games ago. It is constantly jumping over the shark and winking at you and flexing as it flies over the shark on the surfboard. So I think the insanity of it and the campiness of it is part of the appeal. And look, would I have liked a little more Grace? I suppose. Grace's gameplay is awesome. It's super harrowing. You're always stressed out. I know some people don't love the big enemies that constantly chase you, the likes of which they throw at least 4 at you when you're Grace. But I personally love them. They're super fun to navigate and work around. And of course, Grace as a character is just a really awesome, fun, well-written character, I think. Has a lot of depth, contains a lot of multitudes, maybe one of the best Resident Evil characters ever. But here's the thing, Resident Evil games are not that long anyway. Even if you're taking your time with Requiem, it's not going to take you more than 15 or 20 hours, half of which, let's say 5 to 10, is spent as Grace. I think there's something to be said about giving us these two different types of gameplay and not having either of them go super stale. Sure, we love the Grace segments for however long they go on, let's say 5 hours to be consistent, but I don't know if we would feel that way if it went on for 5 more hours and introduced 2 more Stalker Mr. X type enemies. And I think one of the reasons Grace's gameplay stuck with us so much and is so tantalizing and is something we're craving more of is because Capcom knew not to give us too much of it, to not overstuff us with either type of gameplay. And yeah, I do think Leon's part goes on for maybe a little bit too long, especially when you're trying to find those different pieces to open the gate, but I don't think adding more Grace would have necessarily fixed that. Look, in the Resident Evil Revelations games, there's always a side you enjoy more. In RER2, for me, it was Claire and Moira. I liked their dynamic. I thought they were fun, and I'm just a big Claire Redfield fan in general. But I think the push and pull of the Revelations games is what makes them so interesting and so fun. Constantly going between these different styles of gameplay, these different loadouts, these different abilities, these different tasks, going through these areas with a new perspective. I think this structure and this style of Resident Evil gameplay does so much to flesh out the world, flesh out the experience, and also to emphasize how curated this is and how well crafted it is. I think one of the reasons Resident Evil games are so great in this era of forever games and massive open worlds and 300-hour experiences is that they are very well crafted, very tight, 10 to 15 hour cinematic action adventure games. That is something that will always be appealing to me, and I think this structure of the dual protagonist allows these experiences to feel even more tightly crafted. Because instead of spending 15 hours with one character and one loadout and one main objective, you spend 5 to 10 hours with 2. And that allows Capcom to stuff each part of the game with so many memorable moments, so many set pieces, so many enemies and jump scares around every corner in a way that I don't think the modern Resident Evil games have been able to do, spending 20 hours with Ethan. Village's pacing especially is a little bit awkward, I think. In Requiem, though, it is near perfect. So yeah, that's why I love Resident Evil Requiem so much. There's so much that the game throws at you, so many cool or scary or fun elements, but none of them overstay their welcome thanks to that dual protagonist structure. And of course, Leon has unlimited amounts of aura. He's got so much darn aura that I can barely stand it when I play the game. He's just, feels the aura. You ever seen that picture? Feels the aura. That's how I feel every time Leon Kennedy's on screen. But those are my thoughts on Resident Evil Requiem. Let me know in the comments, do you enjoy Resident Evil Requiem? How are you feeling about it? Give it a rating out of 10 down below. Is it going to be in the Game of the Year discussion for you? Tell me all that in the comments. It's a freaking party down there. I hope this video was coherent in my thoughts. I kind of went off the dome rather than a structured review like I usually do for games like this, so let me know how you enjoyed that. Let's get a discourse going about Resident Evil down below. Make sure to like the video, subscribe, hit that big fat button. It is spring, beautiful day outside, and I'm here talking about Resident Evil, but that's besides the point. So, you know what spring means? That means a lot of games are coming out. March has been a busy month. April will continue to be busy. So if you don't want to miss any of it, hit that freaking bell so you don't miss what's going on with the channel, because I've got a lot of fun stuff planned, I don't know, coming. You'll have to find out for yourself, but it's going to be a fun spring, I think. By the way, we're going to be streaming the Mario Wonder expansion this Thursday. Today I'm recording this is Friday. Not sure when you'll see this video, but it will be before Thursday, March 26th, I believe. It will also be on my channel as like a live pending stream. So I just want to hop on for an hour or two, explore the new Mario Wonder DLC, show off the Toad amiibo because I have that pre-ordered. So if you'd like to join me, please do so. It'll be fun. So that's upcoming as well. Share the video with a friend who loves Resident Evil Requiem. And with all that said, I'll see you guys in the next one.